Appreciate it, Pete. You know, the Secretary of State position is a very important one, and one I had no idea how important it was until I attended a presentation about a month ago that was given by Linda Paine from an organization called the Election Integrity Project. Good. Some of you heard about it. They are a nonpartisan volunteer organization formed to research California's electoral system, also to train individuals to observe and document the election process and provide reports to those with the authority to restore fair and honest elections in California. Now, the idea that we did not have fair and honest elections in California kind of escaped me, because I kind of thought, this is California, right? There may be some fraud, there may be some problems, but it's not a big deal. A month and a half ago, I had my mind blown by what's actually happening in this state, and you are too. I wish you could hear the whole hour-long presentation. But next up is Linda Paine. She's a woman of faith with deep love for this country. She became alarmed with the destructive influences of the progressive movement. After observing the 2010 elections, she and 3 others founded the Election Integrity Project to bring the True the Vote. Now, you familiar with True the Vote? Catherine Engelbrecht, the one who got targeted, right? IRS, FBI, OSHA, ATF, the whole 9 yards, the one who's been testifying. Linda and her organization have dedicated thousands of hours to identifying the corruption in our election process and training people to become poll watchers. You can come on out now from your hiding place, Linda. She and 2 of her board members are here to share some of their latest findings and let you know how important it is that we get involved. Now, if you're looking for something to do and you don't have a whole lot of time, this is a perfect thing for you to do, to go to their 4-hour training and then go observe a poll. We need people to do that because when she shared what they did in the Andy Videk election and how instrumental this organization was in making sure that Andy Videk got elected, it'll blow you away. They actually ensured the integrity of the election process so that Andy got elected. Please welcome Linda Paine, and she will introduce her board members when it's their turn to speak. Linda? It's a real hero right here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us here. I love looking out into the faces of all of you who I really see as heroes. All of you have stepped up in one form or another to restore the integrity of California's elections and return California to the representative republic government that we are supposed to be. Very quickly, I'd like to introduce 2 of my board members. They are amazing women who put countless hours, 40 to 70 a week sometimes. Sitting in the middle chair is Ellen Swensen. She is one of the founding board members. She is our chief analyst. Used to be our coordinator for Riverside County, and we've now moved her up and have her overseeing the whole project. Sitting next to Ellen is Ruth Weiss. She is our board member of education. She's also worked tirelessly in San Diego County, and the impact that she will share with you about citizens' involvement with the Registrar of Voters Office and observation of the polls has completely changed that county. So I'm going to let Ruth tell you about that. We got started in 2010. As Don said, many of us in the southern counties went to observe the polls just to see what it was all about after watching a webinar from True the Vote. And we were so stunned at what we saw that we decided to contact an election law attorney. And 4 of us from the southern counties got on a phone call, laid out what we saw, and asked what can be done. And the bottom line is this attorney said, the parties and the candidates cannot fix the problem because it will become politicized. The only way to fix the problem with the issues in California's elections is the citizens. It must be a nonpartisan, citizen-led effort. We hung up the phone with her and asked the age-old question, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? And we began, as I call it, lesson planning. I used to be a teacher, Once a teacher, always a lesson planner. So we began figuring out, okay, before you can solve a problem, you've got to identify the problem. And so we began researching the problem in California's elections. We began with studying the laws. Another of our board members, Susan Morse, met with us one day and dropped on a table the 2-inch thick election law code and said, if we're going to do this, we all need to know what's in this book. Well, we all laughed. She didn't. And we now use that book like a Bible. In order to find out if the laws in California were being followed, we needed to recruit citizens to go to the polls and observe. We needed to train those citizens in those election codes so that they would know what they were looking for. This effort had never been done in the state of California, so there was no blueprint for us to follow. So we put our heads together, met with Catherine Engelbrecht and True the Vote. We flew out to Texas to see what it is they did. We very quickly realized California is not Texas. And so we decided if we were going to do this effort in California, if we were going to put time, resources, and energy, then we wanted results and we wanted consequences for those who were interrupting the fair, honest election procedures. And we decided that we would bring on J. Christian Adams. He is a federal election law attorney. We retained him in January 2011 and worked with him to help us to define the way in which we would gather and document the information that we saw. Because of the effort of 6 major board members who, again, work 40 to 70 hours. By the way, did I say none of us takes a salary? Every single person volunteers. When I talk about heroes, I truly talk about California citizens. 2,100 citizens across the state, from Shasta County to San Diego County, from the Bay Area to the Nevada border and all through Central Valley, stood with us, took that chance to go to the polls and document. Now, California has a lot of things wrong, but one of the good things we have in our state is citizens are allowed to observe every process of the election. We are allowed to ask questions and expect answers. So what we did is we created a training manual by studying the election laws in the election code book. We created what we call an election issues handbook. We took the issues that we saw in 2010, we matched them with what our election laws say, and we created a small handbook that our observers could use to present to inspectors in the polls and simply say to them, the procedure I just observed is not consistent with our understanding of the law or my understanding of the law. Can I show you what is in our issues handbook? And what we have in there is the actual law written out of the election code. At that point, the inspectors have the opportunity to either change the procedure and follow the law or ignore it. Now, I want to tell you, we have a lot of good guys in our poll workers, our poll inspectors, our registrars of voters, but what we learned in 2012 is that many of them are untrained. They have no idea why they're doing what they're doing. They're not trained in the law, they're trained in basically, here's how we've always done it. So we allowed for them to learn what needed to happen. Now, what I want to do now is talk about the 2 prongs of our effort. One is that we have our data work, and I'm going to have Ellen tell you about the work we do with our data, and then our work with the interaction between our registrars of voters and our volunteers. So Ellen, if you can share with them what we do on the data.
Is this working? Okay. Am I sitting in Ann Coulter's seat? How do I rate? Okay, as Linda mentioned, I've been promoted from Riverside County Coordinator to Chief Analyst for the state. And some of your poll observers that I know in the room, this is why you haven't heard from me, but you will be hearing from my replacement, whose name is Judy Hoffman. And we're really focusing on the November poll observing because of just timing of getting a new coordinator. But what my role as Chief Analyst, what we do is we review the voter lists in all the different counties for anomalies like duplicated registrations, deceased people, people voting more than once, etc. And we have a dedicated crew of programmers and analysts, and again, we're all volunteers, we don't take a salary. And our goal is to have very, very good matches and good evidence that we give to the registrars. If we're unsure, we leave it on the table. If we have a close match, we're not quite sure, we call it a possible deceased or a possible duplicate. If we're quite sure, we call it a likely deceased, likely duplicate. We don't want to send them on a wild goose chase at the registrar's office. We want to have the credibility that what we send them is truly an anomaly that needs to be cleaned up. And just for 2013, we did 9 counties, including Los Angeles County, which is the largest voting county in the entire country. And we turned in over 80,000 list irregularities to the registrars of voters. That included, yeah. And we turn them in, and we can't touch the voter list, obviously. We're the citizens. We're turning them to the registrars of voters and copying the Secretary of State, who never responds, by the way, the current Secretary of State. They investigate it, and then they have certain laws they have to follow to remove someone from the list or to inactivate them or whatever. So we're just giving them the list. That included over 50,000 people registered more than once, including people registered 5 times. I swear to God, I see it all the time. About 18,000 people, deceased people, still on the list. And what these people are ripe for the picking for if someone wants to impersonate a voter, because we don't have voter ID, as you know. Linda didn't mention this, but one of the laws that's not being followed is the check-in law to make sure that the person states their name, et cetera, when they check in. It's very easy to impersonate someone in this state. So when you have these messy lists with 80,000, in just 9 counties, 80,000 irregularities, it's easy to impersonate and do voter fraud. And in fact, we turned in over 3,000 suspected unlawful voters. And we're waiting to hear from the registrars whether they've turned them into law enforcement or not. So, and we'll be pushing to make sure that they get to law enforcement, because those are felonies. So, it's great work. We're always looking for funding to help us purchase the voter list, because the statewide list is only $30, but it's kind of a worthless list. I think Pete Peterson might have alluded. They have a sort of a statewide list. It's not really a good list. So we try to buy the counties individually, and it's expensive. So we're continuing the fight, and when combined with observing in the polls, it really helps clean up the act here in California.
Okay, thank you. Ruth, if you can give everyone a quick picture of what it means to turn a county around through good involvement with registrars of voters and volunteers, and then I'll wrap it up and tell you where all of you can get the reports that we have documented for you. This will tell you what's happening in California's elections. Ruth?
Thanks, Linda. We came to people of the state before the 2012 election cycle and said, we have a theory. We believe, with our knowledge of just common sense and a little bit of our knowledge of human nature, that if we're observing the process, if we are there looking over the shoulders of the people who are running our electoral process, we had a feeling that they might do a better job. We had a feeling they might be more on their toes and they would be more likely to be doing things lawfully. We can now come to you in 2014 with absolute evidence that we were right, and that a lot of things have changed for the better in this state, county by county, because of what our observers have been able to give back to us that we then would have as leverage to work with our officials in the state. Our observers are, as Linda said, are not the strong men that you don't have to be out there and be confrontational. That's not what we train you to do. We train you to lawfully intervene at the moment in which something is happening that shouldn't be happening. That's really different from other states where they just write up their observations at the end of the day and they put out a hearsay sort of report. No, our reports are under penalty of perjury, and our people know how to lawfully and gently step in at the moment the infraction is happening, so that voters and votes are protected the entire rest of the day as a result. Then we take the results of those things, and then people who are county coordinators are able to go to the elections officials in the county and say, this is what we're observing. The Secretary of State, who is responsible for making sure the elections are held lawfully, sent out 8, right? Sent out 8 observers in 2012 out of the whole state. And as Linda said, we sent 2,100. And our reports were considerably different. So I'm going to use San Diego County as an example since that's where I am from. And what we were able to do is to say, look, here is your poll worker training manual. In 2012, it was at least 50% of it was completely opposite of what the election code requires. It was absolutely training poll workers to do the unlawful thing. In so many cases, things that really protect the vote and protect the voter were being told to be done entirely against the election code. And that was backed up by some directives that came out from the Secretary of State saying, I don't care what the law says, do it this way. We were able to point out what was going on and saying, no, you can't train your people to do it this way. Train your people to do that because the election code says this. And in slowly working with the election officials, I think the person who was our registrar of voters in 2012 started to feel the heat. And as we continued to push on her, she decided to retire at the end of 2012. And I'd like to take some credit for that.
Okay.
So the new person with whom we've been working now has made significant changes, and I can tell you now that the new booklet that he is using to train our poll workers in San Diego County now is about 99% along the election code, and he is working with us significantly. As a result, most of you probably know what happened in our big mayoral fiasco down there in the last 6 months or 8 months. But I can tell you that, just as was referenced with the Andy Vidak situation, the fact that we have been there to help make the changes that needed to be made allowed the voice of San Diego voters to be heard in that mayoral election, and we were able to elect someone that I think is going to do a great job in San Diego. And it would not have happened without the intervention of the last 2 years of EIP and all of our observers that gave us the leverage. So I want to thank you for that.
All right, thank you so much for being a part. Please come out to the table, grab a report if you didn't have it, and please help contribute to the cause. We need to buy voter rolls, we need to pay for training. We are a citizen effort, and every bit of help, either with your action or with your donations, will be huge in helping us to ensure a fair, honest election. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Appreciate the work. Thank you, Anna.